Some of the finest examples of Art Deco art and architecture are found in Havana. This is Lopez Serrano apartment building, which is being restored by gathering the local government and the neighbors. The leader of the project is the architect Juan Garcia, also an art director and a professor of the Technical University of Havana. Some of his students help him now to restore this beautiful building inspired by the Rockefeller Center of New York. He's tackling one of the most serious problems in Havana, the infrastructural conditions of the old buildings. We met him to know why he's focusing in the Lopez Serrano apartment building. Juan, it's so interesting, this idea of restoring this building, which is so beautiful, and I know it's considered patrimony here in Havana. I want to know why it's such an important building.
In Spanish. Okay.
Please.
Okay. El edificio.
It's an Art Deco building of the 1930s. There are two of this style in Havana, the Bacardi building and this apartment building, the Lopez Serrano, which was named after its owner. The Art Deco style is well represented here in the logo of the International Meeting on Art Deco held here in Havana last year. It's a style that appeared in the Paris exhibition of the 1920s, but the name was adopted in the 90s after a retrospective which called the style Decorative Arts or Art Deco. It's an emblematic building. It was one of the first apartment buildings in Cuba and probably in the Americas. It bears the same style of the American skyscrapers, such as the Empire State Building. So Art Deco was this kind of streamlined and sleek style.
Like stairs.
There are many beautiful things in the decoration of this building. They are very coherent, unique,
Symmetrical patterns.
with incredible views of the city from the rooftop.
I would like to see that.
Okay, let's go to the rooftop. Let's take the lift.
Thank you. Oh, this is so beautiful.
Yes. Esta es la azotea.
This is the rooftop, the city.
Look.
So beautiful. This is one of the reasons why you want to create like a touristic attraction of the building. Would that help to the financing of the restoring of this beautiful Art Deco building?
Yes, it's one of the reasons to have these unique views of the city. There are other taller buildings like the Foxa and the Havana Libre, but to come up here and being able to see the profile of the city, not only rooftops, but the city movement, the people, it's because in this Vedado area, a different relationship produced with the landscape, the sea.
And what's the idea? To motivate tourists to come here?
Yes.
It is one aspect we want to promote about the building, beside its architectural attraction as an example of the Art Deco style. It's the possibility of enjoying the views, it's visiting the apartments, and also visiting the history of the building.
Because this is a building which has been restored, but people are living here. It's not empty. Right?
People will continue to live here. There are 78 apartments and more than 200 people that love the building. When I mentioned that restoration was important, it is because tradition cannot be a dead tradition, but a live one, as long as it nurtures and enriches the present moment. So one loves the present moment with a tradition that reinforces it. Otherwise, it's a dead tradition, a dead past, and there is no value in a dead past. However, people here make the building alive, people love the building and want to restore it. There are many stories in the building. See the tower? In the smallest part up there, Eduardo Chivas used to live. He founded the Orthodox Party, of which Fidel Castro was a member. so it's living history.
And the idea that is inspiring the Rockefeller Center of New York City, that has to do also with
Bueno,
the...
Well, it's an epoch that marks a construction style not only from the stylistic point of view. The building structure is made of steel, like that of those in Chicago or the skyscrapers in New York, built around those times. It is true we have to restore the building. It is true that we have to find funds. Some tenants are a bit pessimistic, but what we really want is that they participate.
I want to know about that, Juan, because I know that it's a big dream, and you're making, alongside with your young students, this dream possible. I want to know more. I want to go to the place in which you work. Can we go?
Podemos ir.
Of course, we can go down where we work.
This is where you work, and it's so interesting to see, Juan, how many things you're doing to bring this building alive, as new as in the beginning of, as in 1932 when it was built. I know that you're doing a lot of peculiar things to restore this building. You are gathering the strength of a lot of people and a lot of institutions, because to restore such a complicated building like this one takes money. And that's one of the things that we're here in Havana lacking, which is money. And I've got this flyer about how to save Lopez Serrano, which is a building. And I loved a quote from a sociologist, Carlos Pleyan, which said, "It's impossible to face the problems of the city with the level of resources that we dedicate to it now," which means that it's impossible to expect that the government, the local government or the national government, takes care of the city and restore all the old buildings that we have. So how are you solving this? How are you tackling this lacking of money, this lacking of financing, to go back in time and try to make this beauty of the building look like in the beginnings?
Large question. Bueno, te diré.
The first thing to change is the mindset of waiting for the state and for the local government to give us all the money needed for the restoration. It's to start from the principle that we have to contribute as well. At home, I decide what to do, what repairs I need to make, and then go find the money I need. Right now, I can get some credit from the bank, okay, but that will not be enough. So if I have a veranda I can rent to a vendor who wants to set up his shop, I rent it to him. And I can use that income for the repair. If I have a room for rent to a Cuban or foreign tourist, then I rent it, because it's money that will be useful for the repair. If I have a property with a rooftop like the one we've just seen in this building, and where I can bring tourists, I lure them to the place, and it's money I'm earning for the restoration. And I'm raising money in addition to the one I'm getting from the state through a credit line. With this, I help the restoration of my house.
Is that working now?
Justamente,
we're just trying to make it work that way. For that, we need to restructure the Board of Neighbors so that they welcome this idea and function accordingly. They will need to decide whether they want to change the small vending places on the ground floor and turn them into a bar or a gym or a printing shop that can be rented to use the proceeds in the restoration of the building. We are at it. The government supports that. The Provincial Housing Authority is also interested because, as you say, if this example here is successful, it could be then applied to other buildings in the city with a cultural or emblematic value.
This is like an experience which you're trying to make it work so it can be reproduced in other cases.
Yes. Esta es una experiencia que estamos llevando.
This is an experience that is being implemented, as you see, by a new type of classroom with all the support from the tenants.
que como ves nos brindan su apoyo.
What are the main obstacles that you're facing now to make this work?
Hasta ahora no hemos tenido obstáculos.
So far, there haven't been any obstacles. We had a meeting with the tenants and with a member of the national parliament, and everyone agrees that for many years there hasn't been a major restoration action in the building.
Un mantenimiento serio del edificio.
Carlos Pleyan wrote an interesting article entitled Havana, an Impossible Equation?
Is it an
Yes.
impossible equation? Is our city an impossible equation? I want your opinion.
No, yo creo que no. Yo creo que
I don't think so. If our project works, it will demonstrate that it's not an impossible equation as long as there is social participation, that citizens participate in the restoration.
Including private investment.
Yes, por
Of
supuesto.
course.
This is a big building, has a lot of historical values, is located in a very trending and very beautiful neighborhood, which is El Vedado. And it's possible to do this because you can attract investors, you can attract money, even small businesses like private ones. But I want to go back to the idea of is it possible for Havana to regain the beauty that lost because of the past of times? I mean, we live in a beautiful city with a beautiful sea and with beautiful architecture that's impressive, and we have like the best experiences what's happening in the whole Havana with the historian offices, and Eusebio Leal works about all this. But do you think it's possible to regain this beauty? And I'm not talking about this kind of big buildings, which is easier in this case. It's not easy, but it's easier. Do you think is it possible? What is it takes? What is it necessary to regain this beauty that we lost?
Mira, yo te diría que lo
The
primero.
first thing is raising people's awareness of that beauty.
Yo recuerdo cuando era
Which is
estudiante.
lost?
Se ha desconocido.
It has not been well known due to a more general and global phenomenon. Architecture has not been widely made public.
Es decir, existen pocas publicaciones de
There are
arquitectura.
only a handful of publications on architecture, few TV programs on design and architecture. In fact, there are places in the city showing a bad state regarding construction. I cannot blame a plain citizen who uses naive or kitsch elements to repair his house because this person doesn't know about them.
De que no conoce. Es decir, yo me siento culpable de
I
eso.
myself feel guilty for not having insisted on this type of cultural education. That's something important that needs to be done. I believe we have to make people aware of what we really need to keep. For tourists, it is important to be able to walk and appreciate the city's architectural value. It's important to insist on those aspects by making public norms, laws, and values found in the city.
We've lived a very deep economic crisis in the last years, Juan, and that's probably the reason why we're seeing in the city a lot of solutions because of the lacking of where to live. People don't have where to live, and they're doing the things by themselves and trying to buy the materials. They don't have professional assessment. Do you think this makes Havana impossible to restore?
A ver,
I mentioned architecture moved to a second place.
Because after all, architecture is an applied art.
sí, por supuesto.
Yes, of course.
Entonces, los arquitectos, que son los
Architects have also been segregated,
segregados. Es decir,
and construction has received priority. For instance, there is a state approval for construction brigades to start working, but there is no state approval for the architect to take part in these construction projects. So we still rely on project companies which are not open to the general population. And that creates problems. So if I want to repair my house and there is a construction brigade I can hire, I tell them what I want them to do without a project. Legislation allows you to do internal repairs without a project. This should not happen. In the case of exteriors, there are regulations, but some are bypassed or licenses granted without the participation of the architect. This is important, as well as the creation of theoretical and visual foundations of what is useful or not, what is good and what is not. Of course, there are different strokes for different folks, but the role of the architect is important, and it is to strengthen this role. And this is a claim by architects 50 years or older, retired architects demanding to be allowed to associate with construction cooperatives to be able to undertake these projects. So we are at a crucial point in which the government will have to decide on this participation, and I hope they will support this possibility of individual participation. What worries me and interests me the most as a teacher is that new generations have the spirit of giving, of participating more freely in a way different from what is now happening.
And I have...
You have more questions?
Of course, I have a lot of questions.
Okay,
because I wonder when, if you have a date, when we'll be able to see Lopez Serrano's totally restored. How much money and how much time does it take to do it?
Bueno, a ver, te diría que en la fase en que estamos.
Our first step is a meeting with the Provincial Housing Authority this week, and here we will cover everything that needs to be done. In the flyer that you have, there are urgent actions that need to be taken. The cost of the total repair of the building is very high. We are working on a project that should be finalized in February. This will outline a general budget for the full repair of the building. But there are anyway urgent measures regarding the building's safety, water, electrical supply, carpentry needs to be checked, so things need to be done step by step. In fact, next week, an overall research of the building will be made to see the areas which have been mostly affected, and this involves several techniques such as ultrasound, and see the state of those structures. This is a process that might take 3 to 4 months, but they also depend on local government decisions. If they want to do it quickly, they will indicate what needs to be done now.
And do you think it will...
Sí, yo pienso que sí, que el gobierno va a apoyar esto.
Yes, I do believe that the local government will support the project. After these actions, we need to restructure the board of neighbors, where we hope young people will join in. Lots of the building's tenants are old people who also demand this repair, and they want better possibilities for access. These board members are the ones who will need to vote and approve the project, what they want. We have already been approached by several people. For example, a carpenter artisan from the outskirts of Havana wants to set up his shop here.
An excellent place here, well located.
That's correct. So we can put his workshop in the parking lot area, and we will have then him for the systematic repair of the windows. There are other artists who also want to set up their studios here.
So you're optimistic.
Yes, the government and the Communist Party are supporting self-employed people and small enterprise. So it's all about giving these people an opportunity to be part of this project in the building. And it's about the board of neighbors to react and to say, this building is my house and I want to keep it.
Why are you so passionate about this building?
A ver, realmente te comentaría.
Well, everything started with the Havana's Architectural Society while we were celebrating the Architects' Day on March the 13th. A documentary was shown. It was made by Sara Vega, a tenant here in the building. And the documentary she made was about the building. It greatly called our attention, and we showed it at the Writers and Artists Guild one day, in which we were discussing things about Vedado. Several neighbors attended and asked for help. So we pledged to bring university students to the project. So for their social practicum, we had 10 students here out of 50 working in the Vedado area. These 10 students asked to remain in the project after their 2-week practicum. Their interaction with the neighbors made them wish to continue working in the project. And we were able to establish the university's workshop for 5th-year architecture students here in the building. So it's a whole team linked to investment, to project companies, and I believe it's a wonderful experience for them. I was greatly motivated by a project that would transcend academic, institutional, and formal frameworks to be able to have a social function. For them, as architects, it is important to see all this process, to see the slowness of the administrative process, and to see how it may be somehow sped up by other means. And they should feel this weight as the social commitment of the architect.
Do you think Havana has more to offer than this old face or this perception that is an old lady? Do you think it has more to offer?
Of course, there is a usual comparison with an old beautiful lady, as you will be.
Thank you very much.
I do believe that Havana has a lot to offer, because the best thing that Havana has is an open and helping population. I have been to other cities where I have felt that if something happens to me on the subway, I will be left lying down. This wouldn't happen here. On the other hand, I do believe that Havana has a lot to offer from the landscape and architectural point of view. An important thing is that the revolution put a stop to the upcoming destruction of the city's historical site. There was a remodeling plan by the Town Planning Association that practically demolished the historical site of Old Havana, just leaving the squares. However, it was stopped. Now Old Havana is a heritage area. There is a restoration plan, and new aqueducts are being built.
It's a world-known experience.
That's the colonial part, but Havana is a creation of styles. In the same way that you arrive in Paris and see a sum of styles and of beautiful areas, Havana has that sum of styles. It's an eclectic and Baroque city. You can arrive in Florence, and it's a neoclassical city. Rome is a Baroque city. They keep this unity of style. However, Havana is a mixture of all these styles. Havana needs more.
What would you change?
What would I change? I would change the need of massively solving the housing problem. That's very important and would imply to declare heritage sites, other areas in Havana, areas which are not precisely what the aristocracy and the bourgeoisie, the counts or marquis built. I also believe that we have to support the restoration of these houses, which are part of a heritage which is not valued equally to what the aristocrats and the bourgeoisie built. Some of these houses could be museums. Urban legislations have to be updated. Closing of verandas, cafeterias, car wash. There have been lots of innovations, and these new laws have to adapt to new ways of life. And the housing problem needs to be solved. Buildings are falling apart, but new buildings are not being erected. Malecón is an example of how new typologies of buildings are being inserted in a 14-block heritage area. That's possible.
Eso es posible, es factible.
Toronto is filled with old buildings and new buildings, and it's coherent, acceptable, which makes the city life modern and pleasant.
What's the formula? The combination of private financing and the state financing? Do you think is that the formula?
Yo creo que eso es importante.
I believe that's important, to open citizens' participation in rescuing what belongs to them.
Propiedad de ellas también. Y el Estado.
And the state has a lot of things in which it has to invest. This mixture is attainable and has to be fostered.
Is your obsession to prove that it's possible?
Yo creo que sí, yo creo que
Yes, it can become an obsession to prove that it is possible and that students feel how this force is exerted one way or the other,
estos golpes de una manera u otra. Utilizando muchos
using a lot of means.
medios.
I wish you all the success in your project, and I thank you for giving us this interview from Havana about Havana. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you.
Amazing.